If seeing those blue ticks without a reply feels like actual torture, you're not crazy. Your brain is reacting like it's under threat. You see the message has been read, but there's silence, not even a single word back. And suddenly, it's not just quiet, it's rejection. At least, that's what it feels like inside your body. Your heart beats faster, your chest feels heavy. You stare at the screen, frozen, hoping maybe you missed a notification. But you didn't. They saw it, they read it, and now you're stuck in that painful waiting zone that feels impossible to escape. You try to focus on something else, but your mind keeps circling back. You start asking yourself what you did wrong. You replay the last message in your head, maybe even scroll up the entire conversation looking for clues. You read your own words like you're analyzing evidence. Did I sound too eager? Was that emoji too much? Was my joke weird? It's like your brain refuses to move on until it knows why. This moment, that pain that rises when someone reads your message but doesn't reply, isn't just emotional, it's biological. It's your attachment system activating, and it's powerful. The silence after the blue ticks doesn't just hurt your feelings. It actually sends signals through your nervous system that something is wrong. Hi, I'm Dr. Mira. I'm a psychologist who helps women heal from anxious attachment and find peace in their relationships, especially in the digital age where connection and rejection can happen on the same screen. What you're feeling isn't weakness. It's your brain's way of protecting you from uncertainty. The problem is, it sometimes protects too hard. Let's unpack this in a simple way. When you send a message to someone you care about, your brain releases little bursts of dopamine. That's the chemical that makes you feel anticipation and reward. You're expecting connection. When you see those blue ticks, your brain registers that the connection started. But when the reply doesn't come, your brain suddenly loses that reward. It feels like an emotional cliff. Your amygdala, the part of your brain responsible for detecting threats, interprets that silence as danger. It can't tell the difference between no reply and emotional rejection. To your brain, both feel unsafe. So it floods your body with stress chemicals like cortisol and adrenaline. That's why you feel your stomach tighten, your throat ache, or your chest get heavy. You're not being dramatic. Your body is literally reacting to loss. And for people with anxious attachment, this reaction is stronger and faster. It's like your internal alarm goes from 0 to 10 in seconds. You don't need clear rejection. Your brain fills in the blanks. You start thinking, they don't care anymore. They're pulling away. They must have found someone else. Those thoughts feel like facts, but they're actually fear-talking. Here's the hard truth. Your brain is wired to see disconnection as danger because, in the past, love might have felt unpredictable. Maybe you had to work hard for attention. Maybe you grew up feeling that love could disappear if you weren't careful. So now, every time someone goes quiet, your body remembers that fear. It relives it. That's why those blue ticks feel like heartbreak, even when it's just a few hours of silence. Maybe you've noticed this pattern. You send a text and see it's been read. At first, you tell yourself, it's fine, they're probably busy. But 10 minutes later, your chest tightens. 20 minutes later, you're opening the app again. You scroll through your chat. You check if they've been active. You notice they just posted a story, and your stomach drops. It's like your whole mood shifts because of one tiny detail. They had time to post, but not to reply. Then comes the spiral. You start doubting everything. You wonder if you're too much. You feel small. Sometimes you even start to preempt rejection. Maybe you send another message just to test if they're still there. Or you go silent yourself, hoping they'll notice. It becomes a game your heart doesn't want to play, but your anxiety insists on playing anyway. Do you ever reread old messages, trying to figure out what went wrong? If you do, tell me in the comments. You're not alone. That's your brain's way of searching for safety. It's not trying to annoy you, it's trying to make sense of uncertainty. But the more you search, the more stuck you feel. Here's what's really happening. When you have an anxious attachment style, your nervous system has trouble staying calm during gaps in communication. It's like your body is addicted to reassurance. When connection pauses, you crave it like oxygen. You need that ping back to feel safe again. But that creates a painful loop. The more you wait, the more your brain panics, and the more reassurance you need. Texting makes it worse because it gives you constant access to partial information. You can see they read it, you can see they're online, but you can't know what they're thinking or feeling. Your brain hates that missing piece. It fills the gap with stories, usually scary ones. It tells you they don't care. You pushed them away, or they're losing interest. But those are guesses, not facts. When you live with this pattern for a long time, it starts to shape how you show up in relationships. You might hold back your feelings because you don't want to scare someone away. Or you might overtext, trying to keep the connection alive. Both come from the same fear, the fear that love will disappear if you stop trying. And that fear doesn't just live in your thoughts, it lives in your body. Your shoulders tense, your breathing becomes shallow, your stomach twists. These are physical signs of emotional stress. You're not just waiting for a text, you're waiting for relief. But here's the truth. That relief doesn't actually come from the other person's reply. It comes from what you tell yourself while you wait. That's what anxious attachment healing is really about, learning how to stay steady even when someone else goes quiet. Because what's happening inside you isn't about this one person or this one message. It's about all the times you felt unseen, unheard, or unimportant before. Your brain remembers that pain and tries to prevent it from happening again. But you can start teaching it something new, that you're safe even when there's silence, that not every pause means abandonment, that not every unread message means rejection. You can start recognizing the difference between fear and fact. The fact is, someone read your message. The fear is, they don't care about me. The more you separate those two, the freer you become. Imagine this. You send a message and they read it. Your brain tenses for a second, waiting for panic. But instead, you take a deep breath. You tell yourself, they might be busy, I'm still safe. You put your phone down and do something that grounds you. Maybe a walk, a favorite show, or calling a friend. That's not pretending not to care. That's emotional maturity. That's your new calm. Healing anxious attachment doesn't mean you'll never feel anxious again. It means your anxiety won't control you anymore. You'll still care. You'll still feel. But you'll trust that connection isn't fragile. You'll trust that your worth doesn't depend on anyone's typing bubbles. And that's where the real peace begins. Not when someone finally replies, but when you stop needing that reply to feel whole. If this spoke to you, I'd love to hear your story. Do those blue ticks ever send your mind into overdrive? Let me know in the comments. Your experience matters here. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. This channel is about real psychology, honest conversations, and healing the anxious mind. So you can build relationships that feel safe, steady, and calm, no matter how long it takes for that next message to arrive. You know that sinking feeling when you see those blue ticks, but no reply? That quiet ache that spreads through your chest, even though it's just a few minutes, or maybe hours, of silence. You tell yourself not to care, but you still find yourself checking your phone again and again. That's not just habit. That's anxiety showing up through your thumbs. What makes this kind of anxiety so tricky is how sneaky it feels. It hides inside normal behaviors, like just checking. But if you look closely, there are clear signs your texting habits are being controlled by fear instead of calm connection. Maybe you start overanalyzing every small thing. You reread your message line by line, wondering if you said something wrong. You think, maybe I used too many emojis, or that sounded too desperate. Then you start imagining how the other person might have read it. Your brain becomes a movie screen showing a story that hasn't even happened yet, but feels painfully real. Here's another thing that often happens. You start timing how long it's been since your message was seen. You know it was 2:13 p.m. when those blue ticks appeared. By 3 hours, your chest feels tight. By 3:15, you're convinced something's off. You look at their social media. You notice they just liked someone else's post or shared a meme, and suddenly your heart drops. Your mind screams, "So they had time for that, but not to reply to me?" Do you ever find yourself doing that, connecting dots that probably don't even exist? If you have, share it below. I'd love to hear your story, because so many women experience this exact spiral, and it feels so isolating until you realize you're not the only one. Sometimes this anxiety shows up as needing reassurance through more messages. You send a quick follow-up, something harmless like, "Haha, just saw this again," or "Ignore me, I'm being silly." But what you're really saying is, "Please don't forget me, please still care." Then, as soon as you hit send, you feel embarrassed. You start regretting it, thinking, "Why did I text again?" You promise yourself you'll stop doing it next time, but when the silence comes back, so does the urge. Here's another subtle behavior: mirroring. You start matching their texting speed to protect yourself. If they take 2 hours to reply, you take 2 hours too. If they write one-line answers, you start shortening yours. It feels like taking control, but it's really just fear in disguise. You're protecting yourself from being hurt again, not because you don't care, but because you care too much. And sometimes it's not about sending more texts, it's about shutting down completely. You go quiet to see if they'll notice. You tell yourself, if they really care, they'll reach out first. But underneath that silence, your anxiety keeps waiting. You're still checking your phone, still hoping, still refreshing. It's like holding your breath for attention. Maybe this one hits close to home. You feel relief when they finally text back. For a moment, everything feels right again. Your heart relaxes, your mind quiets, and you think, okay, they do care. But that peace doesn't last. The next time they take longer to reply, the same panic returns. It's like emotional whiplash. Your sense of calm rises and falls based on someone else's notifications. What's actually happening underneath all this is your attachment system trying to feel safe. When you send a message, your brain expects connection. When that doesn't come, your nervous system interprets it as danger, not consciously, but emotionally. You start searching for a way to fix the discomfort. Checking their status, rereading texts, or double messaging are all attempts to feel safe again. It's not about attention, it's about reassurance. But here's the part that hurts. Sometimes these anxious behaviors can push people away, not because you're doing anything wrong, but because the energy feels heavy. People can sense when a message carries pressure instead of peace. They might not understand its anxiety. They just feel the tension and back off. And that only confirms your fear that you're too much, even though what's really happening is that you're scared, not demanding. Let's look at one more example. It's 10 p.m. You've been texting someone all evening, laughing, sharing stories. Then suddenly, they stop replying. You see the blue ticks, but nothing after that. You try to stay calm. You tell yourself they're probably getting ready for bed. But by midnight, your mind has written 5 possible explanations. You start scrolling through your last message thinking, did that come off weird? You start feeling angry, hurt, confused, all at once. And when they text, sorry, I fell asleep, the next morning, you feel both relief and frustration. You forgive them, but deep down you don't trust that peace will last. That's what anxious attachment does. It keeps you bracing for the next disappointment. When you live in that pattern long enough, texting stops feeling like fun and starts feeling like a test. Every message feels loaded with meaning. Every delay feels personal. You stop enjoying connection because you're constantly waiting for it to disappear. And that's exhausting. The truth is, your anxiety isn't lying to you about the need for connection. Connection is important, but it's tricking you into thinking that reassurance can only come from someone else's reply. That's where the pain keeps repeating. Because when you depend entirely on the other person's responses to feel calm, your peace will always be fragile. The consequence of this pattern isn't just emotional burnout, it's emotional confusion. You start thinking, if I stop caring, I'll lose them. But if I show I care too much, I'll scare them away. You get stuck between two fears, being abandoned or being rejected, and both feel unbearable. So you try to manage their reactions, hoping to keep love steady. But real emotional safety never comes from control, it comes from trust. Here's the hopeful truth, that trust isn't something you have to wait for from others. It's something you can start building inside yourself. It starts small, like noticing when the spiral begins and choosing not to feed it. It's telling yourself, I can feel anxious without acting on it. It's reminding your body that silence doesn't mean danger. That pause between blue ticks and reply doesn't have to mean rejection. Once you start doing that, your brain slowly learns a new rhythm. It begins to associate waiting with calm, not panic. It begins to trust that your worth doesn't disappear when your messages go unanswered. That's when texting starts to feel peaceful again, when your sense of safety isn't tied to the timing of someone else's reply. And that's where we're headed, toward that calm confidence that says, I can care deeply and still feel steady. In the next step, we'll explore exactly how to build that security, how to stop chasing reassurance and start creating it from within, so those blue ticks lose their power to hurt you. Because you deserve relationships that don't feel like emotional guessing games. You deserve to text, connect, and breathe easily again. You've spent so much time living in that waiting zone, watching those blue ticks, feeling your chest tighten, trying to calm yourself while your brain keeps spinning. You've analyzed every word, every pause, every emoji. You've been stuck in that emotional tug-of-war between wanting to reach out and trying not to seem needy. But here's the truth. You don't have to live that way anymore. The good news is, anxious attachment isn't a life sentence. It's a pattern your brain learned to survive uncertainty. And what's learned can always be unlearned. You can absolutely train your mind and body to feel calm, even when your messages sit there unanswered. So let's talk about what secure texting looks like compared to anxious texting, and how to start moving toward peace, one message at a time. When you text from anxiety, you're usually trying to manage connection. You overthink how your message sounds. You hold your breath waiting for a reply. You reread old conversations to check if you said too much. But when you text from security, the energy changes. You send the message because you want to connect, not because you're afraid of losing someone. You trust that if it's a healthy relationship, you don't need to chase reassurance. It will naturally come back to you. Let's picture it. An anxious version of you sends, "Hey, how's your day?" and immediately starts tracking the clock. 10 minutes pass. Silence. Your chest tightens. You think, did I say something wrong? Or, they must not care. You pick up your phone 5 times, fighting the urge to send another text. Now imagine the secure version of you. You send that same message and then put your phone down. You tell yourself, they'll reply when they can. I'm okay either way. You go on with your day. You don't overanalyze because your peace isn't waiting on their response. That doesn't mean you care less. It means you trust more. Instead of checking your phone every few minutes, you focus on something that fills you. Maybe cooking, walking, journaling, or calling a friend who makes you laugh. The message is still there, but it's not controlling you. You've shifted from waiting to living. Here's another difference. When you text from anxiety, silence feels like rejection. When you text from security, silence feels like space. You know that space doesn't mean disconnection. It just means life is happening. Secure people understand that love doesn't disappear between messages. It remains steady, even in silence. The good news is, you can start teaching your brain to feel that steadiness. It's not about pretending not to care. It's about creating calm inside the caring. Here's the first simple step. Slow down your response to the panic. The next time you see those blue ticks and your heart jumps, take a slow, deep breath. Literally say out loud, I am safe right now. It might sound small, but that sentence reminds your nervous system that this moment isn't danger. It's discomfort. And discomfort always passes. The more you practice that, the faster your body learns to calm itself. The second step, separate story from fact. Your anxious brain tells stories that feel true. They're ignoring me. They lost interest. They're mad. But the fact might be, they read the message. That's it. No conclusion. Practice catching those emotional stories before they spiral. Ask yourself, what do I actually know? Most of the time, the answer is less than your anxiety wants you to believe. The third step, reclaim your focus. Every time you catch yourself checking your phone for a reply, shift that energy to something grounding. Move your body, hydrate, text a friend, or go outside. You're showing your brain that life exists outside the waiting. The more you do this, the weaker the obsession becomes. Another important part of healing is changing the meaning of silence. Right now, silence feels like, I did something wrong. But what if silence started to mean, I have space to breathe? You can choose to see it differently. You can let that space remind you that your world doesn't shrink when someone stops replying. It expands. You have time for yourself, your joy, your calm. And if you ever feel tempted to double text or apologize for reaching out, pause. Instead of writing from fear, wait until you can write from clarity. A secure text sounds like, hey, just checking in, no rush to reply. Calm, kind, confident. It doesn't beg for attention, it invites connection. Over time, as you build emotional safety within yourself, your relationships will change too. People will feel your grounded energy. They'll sense that you're not texting to fill a void, but to share connection. That energy is magnetic. It invites respect and mutual effort. You might even start to notice that you attract calmer people. People who don't play games, who communicate clearly, who make you feel seen without constant guessing. And that's not luck. That's alignment. Because when you feel secure within yourself, you naturally create secure dynamics with others. But let's be honest, the healing won't happen overnight. You'll still have moments where your anxiety kicks in. You'll still feel that sting when someone takes too long to reply. But the difference is, you'll know how to handle it. You'll breathe, reassure yourself, and stay grounded. You'll stop letting temporary silence define your worth. Here's the beauty of this process. It doesn't just change how you text, it changes how you live. You start showing up differently in every relationship, with more self-trust, more patience, more peace. You stop needing constant reassurance because you start giving it to yourself. So here's what changes when you heal your attachment anxiety. Instead of thinking, "Why haven't they replied?" you start thinking, "I hope they're having a good day." Instead of asking, "What did I do wrong?" you remind yourself, "I'm allowed to reach out and I'm allowed to wait." Instead of chasing connection, you start creating it, calmly, confidently, with no fear of being too much. Every small moment of self-soothing is progress. Every time you choose calm instead of panic, you're rewiring your brain. You're teaching it that love doesn't have to feel like tension. It can feel steady. It can feel peaceful. Imagine this version of you, the one who sees the blue ticks and smiles instead of spirals. She sends her message, trusts her connection, and goes back to living her life. She knows that real love doesn't disappear between messages. It grows stronger in the quiet spaces too. If this video helped you, let me know in the comments. Have you ever caught yourself obsessing over those blue ticks? What helped you stay calm? I'd love to hear your story. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because on this channel, we talk about the real psychology behind love and anxiety and how to turn emotional chaos into emotional peace. In the next video, I'll show you how to communicate your needs without sounding clingy, how to speak with calm confidence so that your relationships finally feel balanced, safe, and real. Because you deserve love that doesn't make you question yourself, love that feels steady, even in silence.